I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Hello, and welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I get the honor of connecting you with amazing women, women that have taken charge of their lives, women that are change makers, women that want to support others in having a powerful, dynamic life. And so we are everywhere on Spotify and iHeart and iTunes and Spreaker and Amazon and YouTube. Just subscribe and come back every week and meet a new amazing woman. And so our guest today, Pamela Maass Garrett, is an estate planning attorney. She's a mother, she's a wife, she's an entrepreneur, and she is the CEO of Law Mother LLC, a law firm she founded to help parents protect the futures of their loved ones. So she's planted in Colorado. She focuses her practice on helping families and business owners protect their future and their loved ones. So she started her career as a deputy district attorney, and she's had over 40 jury trials under her belt. And wait to see her, she's so beautiful, you'd be like, I want her for an attorney, right? She uses her litigation experiences to help her clients plan in a way to keep them feel safe and loved. And so prior to law school, she earned a BS in industrial engineering, an MS in civil engineering, and uses innovative technology to improve her clients' experience with legal planning. Pamela, hello, welcome.
Hello, Cynthia. Thanks for having me.
I'm very grateful that you're here. And I wasn't kidding. I mean, you look professional, you look beautiful. I'd love to have you walk up and say, I'm representing this person. So I'm very grateful you're here. I want to start with, where you came from, how you grew up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Arizona, and my father is an engineer. My mom is a teacher. So you might expect one of the family values they really instilled in me was education. I'm the first lawyer in my family. When I, shared with my family members I was going to go to law school, people weren't really happy with me. They had bad experiences with lawyers. They didn't trust lawyers. And I really take that to heart when I work with people to, be sensitive to that and kind of come across as a different type of lawyer if I can.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Many, many years ago for the American Bar Association, I was the avocateur and at their conference. And I said to them that, a lot of people have opinions about attorneys, but a lot of times you are the first ones in the field to help people get grounded, get clear about what they need to do to move forward, and it carries a lot of responsibility, but it's also a tremendous gift that you bring.
Yeah.
So, okay, how did you get from trial jury? Okay, so there's engineering, right? And then there's law. How did you get from those two things to doing the work you do today?
Yeah. So kind of the quick background, my high school had a pre-law program, and I got to take law classes in high school, and I probably watched a little bit too much Law and Order in high school. So, engineering was a good background. My dad's an engineer, and he's like, if you don't end up going to law school, this is a good career for you. And I had always been good at math and science, and really became passionate. I was in the Society of Women Engineers, and then I was the president of our chapter, and realized that the part I liked most about engineering was more of the social change and more of the inspiring and the working with people. So I love my engineering background. I worked as an engineer. It was really rewarding. But I always had this kind of burning desire to go to law school. It was something that I had since I was a little girl, and it was something that I really wanted to do. And I was one of those nerdy people in law school that the first day I walked into the building, I was like, had butterflies, and I was so happy to be there. And I had to contain my excitement all the time because it was exactly where I wanted to be for my career. So it has worked out in that way.
Well, but what you're talking about is you stepped into your passion and your purpose. I mean, the fact that you're feeling it on the physiological level, I mean, says to me, okay, I'm home, I've arrived, this is it. Now I just have to go through the classes, but this is my thing. So I went on your website and there are some questions on there. And I really want to dive a little bit into this about why you started this company. So here are the questions on your website. Have you heard that you need a will, trust, or some form of an estate plan, but aren't sure what's right for you? Do you worry about what will happen to your children if you become incapacitated or pass suddenly? Does the idea of creating a wealth and legacy plan in place seem overwhelming and intimidating? And do you want to create a lasting legacy that is passed on for generations? Well, first of all, those are big questions. And so I want to know about your company, and then I want to get into these levels here. So tell me about your company.
Yeah, so Law Mother, we are an estate planning firm that helps families and business owners protect their legacies. And it was inspired because, I started off in public service as a government employee, and I was a deputy district attorney. And one of the first families I helped, it was a young family. The parents were killed in a car crash. Tragic. There was young kids left behind, 5 and 7, and they ended up in foster care because there was no estate plan in place. All the relatives were on the East Coast. They flew out here. It became a huge battle. And these poor kids were put in the middle of it. And it was all because these parents didn't have access to estate planning tools. And that really kind of started me thinking of, I think it's probably a little bit of the engineering mind of like seeing problems in the system and how to improve it. And then I went into litigation with all of these trials. And so I've seen all the ways things go bad over the last, I've been practicing law for 12 years, and my first 10 years of my career were all the battles. And now this focus on this stage of my career is, okay, how can I take that and help parents protect in a better way and make it easier for them? And that's really why we created the firm, why I created the firm, and what our mission is.
Oh, it's beautiful. So my husband and I have a trust in our family. And before we even got married, I was married before and I had a will for my children, but I want to talk about the moments where you are in survival mode. You should be doing something for the future of yourself and your family, but it seems overwhelming. And then it's like, well, you need to do a will, or you need to do a trust, or I mean, it just, and it immobilizes you. So let's talk about what's the difference between a will and a trust.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people feel exactly what you're describing, that discomfort at first, or this, it's uncomfortable to talk about death, right? And then they get overwhelmed by everything. They don't know how to get started. And, the big difference between a will and a trust, wills are directions to a judge for when you pass away. So you're holding title with everything in your name. And when you die, a stranger, a judge, is making those decisions and transferring that title. And it goes through a probate process, a court process that takes time. Here in Colorado, on average, 9 months to 2 years. It's pretty much a national average as well. And nationally, on average, 5 to 9% of your estate. Now, a living trust avoids that process. It saves that time and money. And you put it in effect in life. You're in full control, like what you have set up for your family. And it saves your family that time and money because you're making that transfer. Instead of a judge making those decisions, you're making those decisions.
Wow, well, that's incredible. So you really are future casting what you want for your family and making sure that it happens the way that you want it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, okay. So you talk about legacy, but what's important about legacy?
Yeah, so I, always share the story of a friend of mine. Her mom passed away unexpectedly, and all she had was this voicemail from her saying, "Call me back." And she listens to that voicemail every day. And how much more meaningful would it be if she had more to remember her by? But most of us never get around to doing that. So I always share with my clients, your legacy is more than your estate planning documents. Your loved ones aren't going to snuggle up with that binder when you die. They're going to want more to remember you by. And that's really those insights and stories and values. And how we start that process with them is we do a legacy interview. And I would say for your listeners, writing a love letter to your loved ones about, those types of things, or, going through and recording, all of us are on Zoom more these days. But I've gone through and recorded the Zooms with my daughter, with her grandparents. We've done a lot of Zoom things where I'm interviewing them about their life, but really start to capture all of those insights and stories and your values.
Oh, that's incredible. So you're left with the heart of the person, not just information. I
Absolutely.
love I love that. And so I guess I want to talk about, a lot of us think we're going to last forever. And we all go, I know we're going to die at some point, and I'll get to that later. It's because there's a part of us that's in denial that it could happen when we walk across the street. And so if you don't have a lot of money, but you want to begin, where do you start?
So I recommend getting everything organized in one place. And I share the story of a colleague of mine. Her father passed away unexpectedly. He had nothing written down, nothing in place. And so she had to go through all of his mail, go through all of his files. And it was a 2-year process. He didn't have that large of an estate, but he had some things, and it was very overwhelming. And it's a major problem. In Colorado, there's over $500 million in unclaimed property. In California, there's over 6 billion. So we all just kind of assume if something were to happen to us, our retirement would come to the right people. But it gets lost. So I would say, take out a sheet of paper and get all the information in one place. Get the first page of your retirement account, get the first page of your life insurance accounts, get all the information there in one place, and then tell the people you love where it is. And then when you're ready to kind of go to that next phase of planning, you have everything organized to even start that process.
Well, this is so interesting because both my mother and my husband's father passed away, and both of them did exactly what you were talking. My mother had these file folders, and she wanted me to know, I need you to look at this is what's happening, and I was like, oh gosh, how come we got to go through this, right? But when she passed away, it was such a gift. I just picked up the folders. I just one by one went through the stuff. And his father had us come to his house, showed us where everything was, so that when he passed away, and he passed away, with an illness that was kind of a surprise, same thing. My husband and his sister could go in and do that. I cannot tell, ladies, if you're listening to this, listen to this. Organizing, whether you think you're going to be here another 30, 40 years, is a really fabulous thing for the people that are left behind.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that is often overlooked is, there's some people who really care about what happens to their loved ones when they pass, and they want to make it easier. And there's some people that are like, well, I'm dead, who cares? Right? There's like some people have that mindset. And the other component is that incapacity. If you were to become incapacitated, you're not able to make your decisions. Do you want your plan in place so people follow your decisions? Or do you want a stranger to make those decisions for you? And so having that laid out can make it very easy if that happens. And I think the latest statistic is eventually 1 in 3 of us have some type of incapacitation down the road, hopefully many years in the future, but it's a high amount. So at some point we're all going to get there at some point, but getting that plan to make it easier, it's about that choice.
Yeah. And you wrote this book called Legally Ever After. And so first of all, I want you to tell me why you wrote the book and what it contains, but then I want to ask you a question about women. So tell me about the book.
Yeah, so the book is Legally Ever After, and it's the 6-step plan to protect your children's future and happiness. And I really wrote this book because of what we were talking about in the beginning, that so many parents feel overwhelmed and they feel triggered or uncomfortable talking about death and putting a plan in place. And so I wanted something easy and accessible of, this is how you can get started. This is the information you need to know. Let's take the next step. And most estate planning firms, most estate planning information is really targeted to people over the age of 65. And there are so many young parents who this information can really save their children's lives and make it better. And so I wanted something written that could apply to them. And the reason it's legally ever after is we're playing on the Cinderella story that we all remember. And your children, they don't need a fairy godmother. They don't need a prince to save the day. They need you to put together an estate plan to protect them.
Well, that's incredible. It's incredible. And that really leads me to my question. I have counseled and coached so many women who have been in relationships and they get divorced or the husband passes away or whatever, and they're clueless about the estate plans. They're clueless about the financial planning. What do you have to say to women about being savvy about what's going on in their lives?
Yeah, so I think that's something that I see every day. And when I meet with couples, there's sometimes the husband calls my office. Sometimes the wife calls my office, right? Like it's kind of, and there's always one dominant spouse who like wants to do the session without the other person, not because the other person, they're trying to hide it, but they just know like I'm the financial person in this marriage and my spouse doesn't want to, it's not their thing. And we're like, well, they need to be part of the session and we'll get them there and it's totally fine. And then that session, I'm always trying to, whether it's I have a lot of same-sex partners. I have, people that don't, who are binary, who don't subscribe to any type of gender. And then I have, kind of traditional, and it's always the same thing, right? It's, there's so much trapped up in, financial from with everything that you do, Cynthia, that's your whole world. Right. And so it gets triggered through this process. So I would just say, start it, just get started, be part of the conversation, and it will lead to so much more. And just take that step, take that first step.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, it's really interesting because I grew up poor and the relationship to money was interesting to say the least. And so when I started getting coaching for my business, my coach wanted me to do two things. They wanted me to get clear about my relationship to money and how I was going to manage it. And then also how I was going to manage the documentation and the forward planning for my life. Neither one of them had been in the forefront because I was so busy survival and taking care of my kids and whatever. Are you married?
I am. I'm married and I have a daughter.
Yes. And so how old is your daughter?
She is 18 months and my husband's a stay-at-home dad. So
that's great. So you haven't started talking to her about estate planning yet.
Not yet. I mean, she did. She has held my book.
Well, and I love this. And can we talk just a moment? Because I'm finding more and more women and relationships that roles have changed. So what made you and your husband choose for him to be the stay-at-home dad and for you to go out and do the other work?
Yeah. So I think it was an evolution, part of it was I got pregnant during the pandemic and, and childcare is challenging right now to find. And my business had been doing well. I started it right before the pandemic and we were growing it. And, part of it was financial. My business had got to the point where, we could kind of sustain us off my income. And so it was the idea of, and that all didn't happen in the beginning. Look, when I was pregnant, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay? I'm going to pay for everything. Now it's at that point, but there was like a big panic of, pulling out money from retirement accounts and all of that, all the things you do when you start a business, right? You pull out all the money from your retirement account. But ultimately for my husband, it was he would rather spend the time with our daughter than pay someone else. And we were lucky enough that I could kind of cover things. And so at least for this time period while she's growing up, eventually he may go back to work. But right now, this is the plan and it's working for us.
Well, absolutely love this story. And I'll tell you why. I think the pandemic sat humanity down and said, what do you really value? What do you really want to do? How do you really want to do this? And so, I mean, so all kinds of things have happened in relationships and the way in businesses and the way of operating based on value. And yeah, childcare is crazy and a lot of other stuff is crazy. But what your husband said was, I value this relationship with this new being in our lives more than I do struggling out here and getting someone I don't know to take care of it. So I love that. And I love that the two of you have done that, and that you get to, your face lights up when you talk about your business and you talk about the difference that you're going to make. That's exquisite to me.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So how do people find you and get to your services?
Yeah, so my website is lawmother.com. And then if you go to lawmother.com/LEA for Legally Ever After, you can get a free chapter of the book, and learn all the details about the book as well.
Incredible. Well, I'm honored to know you, and I'm excited that you're doing the work that you're doing. I ask my guests the same last question. This show is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the one thing that's important about the awakening of women?
I think that, when it comes, at least for my journey, any new goal I set, any new discomfort I have, whether it's planning for the future or taking on a new goal, there's always an initial excitement and then there's resistance, right? There's some discomfort. And I would just say kind of lean into that, have that space, know that it's there, but don't let it stop you in your tracks. And I feel like every day with what I do, I come across families who have that initial resistance around estate planning and planning for their death and how uncomfortable it is to talk about it. And they push past it. And it's always a great result. And it always inspires me to take things to a different level. So I would say for you and for anyone listening, that expect that resistance and kind of sit through it and push through.
Yeah, you're birthing something new. And there is that transition moment in birthing babies and everything else. So, hey, that's right. You got to move through it. Thank you so much. I just love
Absolutely.
it. Well, Pamela, thank you for being here. Continued success, and you're doing a great service. I'm really honored to have spent this time with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cynthia.
So, ladies, I say the same thing to you every week. Really look in that mirror and see how amazing you are, how beautiful you are, how unique you are, how powerful you are. You're unrepeatable. That's exciting to me. So you came here to do something no one else can do. Your awakening is necessary and essential on this planet. Otherwise, you would not be here. I love you. I will see you next week with another fabulous woman. Many blessings.